Most people believe that a heart attack strikes like a bolt of lightning out of a clear blue sky. They think it is a sudden and violent event that gives absolutely no warning. But medical data tells a much darker and much more terrifying story. A heart attack does not start the moment you clutch your chest and fall to the floor. It is more like an intruder who has already broken into your house, standing quietly in the corner of your bedroom for 24 hours before they finally make their move. You just do not see them. Right now, across the United States, statistics show that nearly 50% of people who suffer a fatal heart attack die before they ever hear the sirens of an ambulance. They do not die because their condition was medically impossible to treat. They die because their body was knocking on the door, screaming for help, and they simply ignored the sound. They brushed it off as stress, or a bad meal, or just a heavy day. Today we are going to tear down that illusion. I am going to reveal the single most critical red flag that your heart sends out exactly 24 hours before it faces complete failure. This is the exact same hidden warning sign that emergency room doctors and leading cardiologists quietly tell their own families to watch out for. It is not the dramatic chest pain you see in the movies. It is something far more subtle and far more sinister. By the time we finish, you will have a 24-hour survival blueprint. You will know exactly what is happening inside your blood vessels, and more importantly, what you must do the moment you feel it. Because the chilling truth is, you might be experiencing this exact symptom right now, sitting in your living room, quietly blaming it on the weather or a simple lack of sleep. Listen closely, because the next few minutes might be the only thing standing between you and a tragedy that could have been completely prevented. Every year in the United States, thousands of people make a fatal miscalculation. They feel a burning sensation in their chest, a heavy pressure right below their rib cage, or a dull ache spreading into their back. They walk to their medicine cabinet, twist the cap off a bottle of liquid antacid, swallow a dose, and sit down in their recliner waiting for the heartburn to pass. They do not realize they have just sealed their own fate. To understand why this happens, we have to look at a biological flaw in the human nervous system known as referred pain. Your brain is a biological supercomputer, but it has a dangerous blind spot. The nerves that transmit pain signals from your heart travel along the exact same neural pathways as the nerves from your esophagus and your stomach. When your coronary artery begins to suffocate from a lack of oxygen, the heart sends a desperate distress signal up the vagus nerve to the brain, but the brain gets confused by the shared wiring. Instead of interpreting the signal as a dying heart muscle, it reads it as a severe case of indigestion. This neurological mix-up is the ultimate deceiver. Medical data reveals that nearly 30% of patients who arrive at the emergency room in the middle of a massive heart attack initially believed they just had severe acid reflux from something they ate. They delay calling for help for 2 hours, 3 hours, or even a full day. And in the context of cardiovascular trauma, waiting 3 hours is a death sentence. The antacids they take do absolutely nothing to clear a blood clot, but they provide a false sense of psychological comfort, while the heart muscle slowly suffocates in the dark. So how do you tell the difference between a harmless stomachache and a coronary nightmare? The distinction is incredibly subtle, but absolutely critical. Normal indigestion typically features a sharp burning pain that moves up toward your throat and often leaves a sour taste in your mouth. It usually changes when you shift positions, burp, or take a deep breath. The deceptive pain of a silent heart attack behaves very differently. It is rarely a sharp or stabbing sensation. Patients consistently describe it as a heavy, crushing weight, as if a large concrete block has been placed squarely on the center of their chest. It does not improve when you sit up. It does not get better if you drink a glass of water or swallow stomach medicine. It sits there, deep and relentless, radiating a dull ache into your lower jaw, your neck, or your left shoulder. If you ever feel this specific type of heavy, unyielding pressure, and it lasts for more than 15 minutes, you are not experiencing a stomach issue. Your nervous system is being tricked. You are in the middle of a cardiovascular event. Acknowledging this single medical fact requires you to abandon what you thought you knew about your own body. It is a terrifying realization, but understanding this difference is exactly what separates the people who wake up the next morning from the people who do not. We have established that your brain can lie to you about pain, tricking you into believing that a dying heart is just a rebellious stomach. But there is one physiological response that your body cannot fake and it cannot hide. It is the ultimate red flag, a biological siren that begins to wail exactly 24 hours before your heart muscle begins to permanently die. To understand it, we need to strip away the skin and look at the microscopic warfare happening inside your chest. When a coronary artery reaches 90% blockage, your heart does not immediately stop beating. It struggles. It pumps harder, desperately trying to pull oxygen through a pathway that is now the size of a pinhole. Your brain, monitoring every single drop of blood in your body, instantly recognizes that the cardiac output is dropping to dangerous levels. In a desperate attempt to keep you alive, your brain activates the sympathetic nervous system. This is your primordial fight or flight response. Your adrenal glands release a massive toxic surge of adrenaline and noradrenaline directly into your bloodstream. This chemical flood is designed to help you run from a physical predator, but there is no predator in the room. The threat is inside the cage with you. This massive adrenaline spike triggers a very specific, unmistakable physical reaction. You will experience a sudden, unprovoked cold sweat, a condition technically known in the medical field as diaphoresis. This is not the kind of sweat you get from a tough physical workout or from sitting out in the hot afternoon sun. This is a freezing, clammy moisture that suddenly coats your skin, even if you are sitting completely still in a freezing room. Your body is literally in a state of profound physiological panic. Your blood vessels constrict, pushing the blood away from your skin to protect your vital organs, which is exactly why your skin feels so cold and damp to the touch. But this cardiac cold sweat never arrives alone. It brings a companion, a psychological symptom that is so deeply disturbing that medical textbooks actually have a clinical name for it. It is called a sense of impending doom. Patients who survive massive heart attacks often struggle to describe it to their families. It is an overwhelming, crushing wave of dark anxiety, a profound certainty that something terrible is about to happen to you, even though you cannot logically explain why. You are not hyperventilating. You are not having a classic psychiatric panic attack. It is a quiet, heavy terror that settles deep in the pit of your stomach. Let me tell you exactly how this looks in the real world. Consider the case of a 62-year-old man. We will call him David. David was in reasonable cardiovascular health, took his blood pressure medication every day, and felt completely normal on a Tuesday evening. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, David woke up abruptly. His bedroom was perfectly chilled by the central air conditioner, set to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet David was freezing. He touched his forehead and found it slick with cold moisture. He looked down and realized his cotton t-shirt was absolutely drenched in sweat, sticking completely to his chest. The sheets beneath him were dark and damp. He sat up on the edge of the bed in the pitch-black room. He did not have any chest pain. He did not have any pain radiating down his left arm or up into his jaw. But as he sat there in the quiet darkness, a heavy, suffocating wave of dread washed over his entire body. He felt incredibly unsettled, as if a dark shadow had just crossed over his life. David sat there on the edge of the mattress for exactly 20 minutes. He tried his best to rationalize it. He told himself that he must have had a terrible nightmare that he simply could not remember upon waking. Maybe he was fighting off a mild winter flu. Eventually, he took off the wet shirt, put on a dry one, and forced himself to lay back down and go to sleep. He woke up the next morning feeling somewhat tired but pushed through his daily routine. Exactly 12 hours after he woke up in that terrible cold sweat, David walked down his driveway to check the mail. He collapsed violently onto the concrete. His left anterior descending artery, often referred to as the widowmaker, had completely closed off. David survived, but only because his next-door neighbor happened to be a retired paramedic who sprinted over and started chest compressions immediately. When the emergency room cardiologist reviewed his medical chart, they confirmed what they see in thousands of similar hospital cases every single year. That cold sweat at 3 o'clock in the morning was not a bad dream. It was the absolute beginning of his heart attack. His sympathetic nervous system was screaming at him, trying desperately to tell him that his cardiovascular system was collapsing in real time. He was given a 24-hour head start by his own biology to save his own life, and he slept right through it. This is the tragic reality of the 24-hour warning sign. Men often brush it off as extreme stress from work or just a weird physical fluke. Women, who are already tragically misdiagnosed in cardiac care across the country, frequently mistake this sudden cold sweat for a severe menopausal hot flash. But a hot flash makes you feel like you are burning up from the inside out. This specific cardiac cold sweat leaves your skin feeling like a piece of damp marble. It is cold, it is clammy, and it is always accompanied by that undeniable shadow of absolute dread. Your body is an incredibly brilliant machine. It truly does not want to die. It will sound every single alarm it possesses before the final structural collapse. If you can recognize this physiological distress signal, you can completely rewrite your own timeline. You do not have to wait for the crushing chest pain to begin. You do not have to wait until you are gasping for air on the living room floor. You have a clear window of opportunity to intervene. If your pillow is drenched in cold sweat in an air-conditioned room, your heart is begging for help. Do not change your shirt and go back to sleep. To understand why your body throws you into that freezing cold panic exactly 24 hours before a massive cardiac event, you have to look inside the primary supply line of your heart. The medical community often compares your arteries to simple household plumbing. They tell you that cholesterol builds up like rust inside a pipe until it simply clogs. But that is a dangerous oversimplification. Your coronary artery is not a dead metal pipe. It is a living, breathing ecosystem, and what is happening inside it is far more violent than a simple clog. Over the course of decades, microscopic injuries in the inner lining of your blood vessels allow cholesterol, calcium, and inflammatory cells to bury themselves deep into the artery wall. They form something called an atherosclerotic plaque. But I want you to visualize this plaque not as a layer of rust, but as a highly toxic balloon filled with a core of dead cells and liquid fat, growing right beneath the surface of the artery wall. For years, this toxic balloon simply sits there, pushing inward, slowly narrowing the tunnel. Your heart adapts. It pumps a little harder. You might feel a little tired going up the stairs, but nothing else. Then comes the critical 24-hour window. Something triggers a catastrophic failure. It could be a sudden spike in your blood pressure, a surge of intense emotional stress, or severe physical exertion. The thin fibrous cap containing that toxic balloon stretches to its absolute limit, and it tears open. This microscopic tear is the exact moment the clock begins ticking on your life. The moment that toxic core bleeds out into your bloodstream, your body registers a massive internal injury. And your body does exactly what it is programmed to do when it senses an open wound. It sends in the emergency response team. Millions of sticky, specialized cells called platelets rush to the site of the rupture. Their only job is to stop bleeding by forming a clot. If you cut your finger with a kitchen knife, these platelets save your life by sealing the wound. But inside the tiny, narrow tunnel of a coronary artery, these cellular repair workers make a fatal miscalculation. They begin building a massive, sticky web over the ruptured balloon. They pile on top of each other, layer after layer, aggressively building a biological dam. This is the domino effect. The clot grows exponentially, feeding on itself. Within hours, it reduces the blood flow to a mere trickle. This is precisely when your brain detects the drop in oxygen and triggers the cold sweat and the crushing sense of doom we talked about. The platelets do not stop. They keep building until the entire tunnel is sealed completely shut. Zero oxygen is now reaching the heart muscle. In the emergency room, cardiologists live by a very strict, unforgiving rule. They say time is muscle. It is not just a catchy phrase. It is a brutal biological law. When the blood supply is completely cut off, the cells of your heart muscle do not just fall asleep. They begin to suffocate and die. At exactly 0 minutes of oxygen deprivation, the affected muscle begins to ache violently. This is the crushing chest pressure. At 20 minutes, the very first heart cells undergo irreversible necrosis. They explode, dying forever. Human heart tissue does not grow back. It does not regenerate like your skin or your liver. Once it dies, it turns into stiff, useless scar tissue. At 40 minutes, the zone of dead tissue expands massively, and if you reach the 6-hour mark without surgical intervention to blast that blood clot open, a massive portion of your heart is permanently destroyed. If you survive, you will spend the rest of your life breathless, tethered to medications, living with a fraction of a functioning heart. This microscopic chain reaction, from the moment the toxic balloon ruptures to the moment the platelets completely seal the artery, takes time. It does not happen in 3 seconds. It is a progressive, violent biological event that often takes up to 24 hours to complete its deadly cycle. That 24-hour window is not just a waiting period. It is the only escape route you have. It is the exact amount of time you are given to stop the dominoes from falling before the damage becomes permanent. If you wake up in the middle of the night drenched in that freezing sweat, gripped by that undeniable sense of impending doom, you are now inside the 24-hour window. This is the exact moment where human instinct will try to kill you. Your brain, exhausted and confused, will desperately try to convince you to just lay back down, pull the covers up, and sleep it off. You must fight that urge with every ounce of willpower you possess. Laying down decreases the assistance of gravity in your blood flow, forcing your struggling heart to work even harder to push blood through a collapsing vessel. Going back to sleep while a blood clot is aggressively building inside your coronary artery is an absolute death sentence. You will simply transition from sleep into cardiac arrest. Instead, you must immediately execute a very specific biological intervention. Your very first weapon is the most common medication on Earth, but you must use it exactly right. You need an adult aspirin, specifically 325 milligrams. But here is the critical twist that most people do not know. Do not swallow it whole with a glass of water. If you swallow an aspirin, it takes up to 45 minutes to break down in your stomach and enter your bloodstream. 45 minutes is an eternity for a dying heart muscle. You must chew the aspirin completely, grinding it down into a paste in your mouth before you swallow. Chewing it allows the chemical compound to be absorbed almost instantly through the mucous membranes under your tongue and into your blood. Within 5 minutes, that medication reaches the blood clot and forcefully strips away the sticky layer of those platelets, halting the domino effect. It will not dissolve the clot that is already there, but it will absolutely stop it from growing any larger while you wait for emergency surgery. Once you have chewed the aspirin, you must secure your environment. Do not get in your car and try to drive yourself to the emergency room. If your heart rhythm destabilizes behind the wheel, you will kill yourself and innocent people on the road. Instead, walk to your front door, unlock the deadbolt, and leave the door slightly ajar. This ensures that paramedics do not waste 3 precious minutes breaking down your door with heavy tools when they arrive. Finally, dial 911. Do not downplay your symptoms. Do not tell the dispatcher that you are feeling a little sick or having some chest tightness. The emergency triage system works on keywords. You must say these exact words clearly and calmly. I am experiencing a heart attack. I am alone, and my front door is unlocked. That specific phrase instantly elevates your call to the highest possible medical priority. After you hang up the phone, do not walk around the house. Find a wall near the open front door and sit down on the floor. Pull your knees up slightly toward your chest. This specific seated position is a medical strategy that reduces the amount of blood returning to the heart, immediately lowering the mechanical workload on the damaged muscle. Close your eyes and take slow, deep breaths through your nose. By following this exact protocol, you take the control away from the panic. Your only job now is to keep your heart rate as low as humanly possible until the paramedics walk through that door. You stop being a victim of a silent killer, and you become the architect of your own survival. We have covered the exact biological sequence of a dying heart. You now know that a heart attack is not a sudden, violent accident, but a 24-hour process that you can actually control. If you take away only one piece of information from this entire documentary, let it be this: your body will never lie to you. If you wake up covered in a freezing, clammy sweat accompanied by an overwhelming and unexplainable sense of dread, your 24-hour countdown has officially begun. Do not let pride, denial, or simple embarrassment cost you your life. Thousands of people die every single year simply because they are terrified of feeling foolish at the emergency room. They sit at home clutching their chest, worrying that the doctors will run a dozen tests, only to tell them it is just a bad case of heartburn. Let me be absolutely clear about this. Emergency room cardiologists would much rather treat 1,000 cases of severe indigestion than zip up one more body bag for a patient who was too polite to call for help. It is infinitely better to lose a few hours of sleep and feel a little embarrassed than to permanently lose your life on your living room floor. You now hold the ultimate survival blueprint, but this medical knowledge is entirely useless if it stays locked inside your head. Send this video directly to your parents, your grandparents, and anyone you care about who lives alone. Sharing this information might literally save their life tonight. Hit the subscribe button right now to arm yourself with more critical, data-driven medical survival strategies every single week. Do not wait until the ambulance sirens are ringing outside your house to figure out what you are supposed to do. Listen to your heart before it permanently stops talking.